Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Wilson, and I'm the product manager for our Morningstar Office product. I've been with Morningstar for about 14 years, and I'm really excited to be here today with this dynamic panel. I think these advisors have a lot of good insights to share with you today. A couple of housekeeping items. First, I'd like to say thank you to Schwab for the great lunch today. It was nice of them to offer that up. I'd also like to thank the Morningstar Women's Initiative for putting this track together today. It's something that we haven't done before, and I think it's a really cool way to get at some of the issues that advisors face, both men and women, and the way that they deal with their clients. Again, both men and women. So I'm really excited that I was asked to be up here. I think I'm the token man for the track, but it's really great to be up here. I'm going to hand it over to the advisors to introduce themselves. They're best at telling kind of their stories and who they are. But first, let me introduce, we have Laurie Berry with UBS, and we have Jen Dawson from Balsa, Dinvemo, Foltz, and we have Stacy Francis from Francis Financial. So thanks all for being here. And Laurie, we'll start with you. Maybe you just want to kind of do an introduction.
Sure. Thank you so much. My name's Laurie Berry. I'm a certified financial planner and wealth advisor at UBS Financial Services here in downtown Chicago. It'll be my 25th year as a financial advisor this year, helping all different types of clients. However, we have an all-women team back at the office, and over 75% of our clients are women that we work very closely with. I started in what I consider the business a long time ago, as I experienced a lot of women issues at a really young age with my own family, with divorce and healthcare issues. So I feel that puts us in a really great position for educating and communicating those topics with our clients. And we feel like we use a very simple yet sophisticated approach with our women clients that I'll look forward to sharing with you today.
I'm Jen Dawson, and I'm a CFP and wealth manager at Balsa, Dinvemo, Foltz, or you'll hear me call it BDF. So I've been with BDF for 8 years, and we help over 900 households. We manage over $3 billion in assets, and we have about 50 team members. And so when we think about wealth management, really define that as managing the investments, of course, combined with financial planning. And so all the professionals at BDF that are client-facing are either CFPs or working towards becoming CFPs. And so really what we do is a page out of the financial, certified financial planning book, really with, building the balance sheet, retirement projections, tax planning, insurance. We don't sell insurance, but we advise on that, and college planning. And so we absolutely believe that all of our clients benefit from that planning that we do for them, and it's the foundation of our investment strategy. But then about 7 years ago, we decided to create two groups within the firm, two teams. So we have a business owner team and then women's service team. And so we focus on the unique legal and tax issues that those two groups have. And I feel very blessed to be at a place where I get to work on the women's service team and really spend my days helping women be the best versions of themselves. And financial peace of mind is one big component of that. So we help women going through divorce, women who have lost a loved one, or then I lead our team that works with professional women.
Great.
It sounds like we have a very similar practice. We're a boutique in New York City, down on Wall Street. I started the firm 13 years ago, and it was all women until about 3 years ago, where I brought a few gentlemen on board, which has been a great decision. We primarily work with women going through transition, and that transition can be loss of a spouse, divorce, or transition in their career. So all of our clients are going through, for them, sometimes the scariest, most difficult time of their life. And we've done a lot of training, and we have certain processes set up in place to be able to help them through that period. We also are certified divorce financial analysts. We can testify in court and work very closely with matrimonial attorneys as part of the legal team and financial team for our clients going through divorce. And as such, we model out settlements that are being proposed, the financial tax implications, both on a 5, 10, 20, even 30-year time frame. That's a big part of our business as well, and one that is phenomenally rewarding.
Great. I wonder if maybe we just start off on a high note and talk about, maybe each one of you could talk about a time when you really found success, either with working with a client that lost a spouse or going through a divorce, and how you were uniquely positioned to help them through that transition. And maybe Jen, we'll start with you because you're in the middle. We'll switch around.
Sure. So thinking about a unique situation in a prospective, or meeting with a prospective client. So thinking about you're going into the situation, we really hadn't seen much about her finances or the MSA, but it was really the 11th hour of her divorce, which is not the optimal time to be coming in. I mean, really to help make decisions early on versus at that end stage, but this is, the situation was what it was. So we were able to really go through, build out the balance sheet, figure out some key points for her, but she's in such a fog at that moment that really boiling it down to, there were two things. One was very technical. One was they were splitting the company stock. They were just giving that all to her, and it had huge gains in it. So that's a tax planning issue that divorce attorneys are very good at what they do. They're very focused on the positioning and the negotiations, but they're not looking at the taxes like CFPs often take that perspective. So thinking that the IRA is very different than the house, very different than cash in hand, very different than company stock. And so having that conversation with her that this is something that from a tax perspective it's not equal. So talking her through that. And then the other thing was on the softer side, was on looking at the MSA. She was going to be receiving permanent maintenance, and which is a bit unusual. But thinking about permanent maintenance, and there was a provision in there that if she ever lived with somebody or remarried, that would end. So in essence, that's saying that, she's never going, if she wants to continue to receive that maintenance, then she would never have that move. And that's a big life decision. And she wasn't looking at it from that perspective, and they were able to edit that language. And so it was a big game changer for her, both technically and then emotionally. And I think we had that client for life because right away we were able to add value. And it's just really fun to work with her at looking at what's next, her next phase, and helping her through that transition.
Stacy.
So the client I'm thinking of, she came to us and her husband had just run off with a woman who was 2 years older than her daughter, 32, he was 70. She was absolutely devastated and had no self-worth because of this. And we helped her through the entire process. So we worked very closely with her attorney and helped model out the settlement for her. And in particular, essentially we found that we were often translators for all the legalese and jargon that her attorney was using. Very qualified, very good attorney, but just our client really is not financially or legally sophisticated. So we ended up going to all of her meetings with her attorney, meeting with her as often as weekly, just checking in and seeing how things were going. The divorce has been finalized. She's very financially secure, and she's actually now, it's been a year since the divorce was finished, and she's a completely different person. She's happy. She's doing things that she's always wanted to do, and just 2 weeks ago confided in us that we saved her life, which, sometimes you hear that from clients of you're such a lifesaver. But she said, no, I was really considering committing suicide before I met you, and you told me that I could live financially and that I would be okay. And it's, I have to say, some of the most rewarding work you can do. It's definitely, you have to be ready emotionally, but it's something where you feel like, wow, I really did make a big difference for this person.
Great.
Wow. We do life-changing things for our clients, which is great. I feel like in just two different kind of transition issues for clients, again, sticking to the basics with clients in need at that time seems really important. In two different situations, one, a woman who is going through a divorce. Everyone was, again, talking the legalese with her, and even the financial mediator was just talking money and all the numbers and the technical analysis of the future. And she came to me one day, and this is when I realized it's what was really on her mind, and showed me her real estate tax bill and said, "What is this, and how do I pay for it?" And it was something as simple as that after being married for 30 years, she had no idea what it was, where she was going to possibly get the money for it, because most of the assets were tied up in retirement accounts. So we were waiting for the quadro to go through the court system. So I helped her maneuver through that very simple situation. And she basically will come to me with any simple financial decision. But as most of our clients who go through something as traumatic as a divorce situation, she's grown dramatically, she's listened, she's become educated by myself and others around her so that she can make those simple decisions. But to her at that moment, it was very key. And when you talk about transition or women changing jobs, that's another very fearful time in their lives. And one woman who was changing jobs, all she was hearing about is how to roll over her IRA, and that's what all the financial advisors she met with were talking about. And when we had met with her, we were talking simply about the big picture and her healthcare coverage and budgeting. And again, another sort of client for life, life-changing discussion that's what she was really focused on. So really focusing on some of the basic things that we may not think of in a day-to-day situation are really important to these clients going through major life-changing situations.
Yeah, great. I think there was a stat kind of mentioned earlier today from a Fidelity survey that 72% of couples thought that they communicated effectively, and yet only 4 in 10 knew what their spouse had earned. So it kind of talks to that. We were talking at lunch about this communication issue that happens. I'm married. I admit it does happen between spouses that communication could sometimes be better. I think, we've talked about kind of laying the groundwork of trust. What you guys were just talking about had to do with kind of divorce situations. Talk a little bit about kind of laying the groundwork of trust when working with couples. How do you communicate with both sides? We know that 70% of advisor, or 70% of women will likely transition to a new advisor after the death of a spouse or in a divorce situation. We also know that women on average will outlive their spouse by 14 years. So there's this long period of time that advisors, quite frankly, are at risk of losing business if they're not communicating clearly with both sides of the house. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you approach that? Stacy, I don't know if you want to lead off on that one.
So I think the biggest mistakes is that we let clients meet with us as advisors, not having the women participate. And that's where you're pretty much assured that once they get divorced or unfortunately the gentleman dies, you're going to lose a client. That's just the way it is. So we require our couples to meet together. There are some women that are resistant to that, and the way we get around that is that we meet with them where they want to meet. Maybe we'll take them out with some girlfriends and we'll go to the spa. We're setting up an event where it's called Face Love Fitness, and it's actually exercises for your face, and they promise to shave off 5 years, so I'm willing to do that. But making sure that she's engaged, and even if she may not be engaged in understanding every number, that you're educating her, that you're talking to her in a way that she understands. And just put yourself in the other person's shoe of how do you feel when you go to the doctor, and how would you feel if you just got the worst diagnosis of your entire life and the doctor's speaking at you faster than you can imagine. You're sitting there alone in the chair and he's using technical jargon that you have no clue, and you don't know whether or not you're really going to live or die. Like literally, you can't even suss that from the conversation. That's how a lot of women feel. And so we need to make sure that we're talking to both men and women in the way they like to hear information. And for our clients, our women clients, they tend to be, they like to see things more holistically. And so we actually create mind maps for them. And it shows who their advisors are, their assets, where they are located, includes the important people that are to them, their relationships, their goals. It also includes areas like process. How do they want to be communicated with? Is it in person? Is it text? Is it email? Is it just checking in once a month on the phone? And then also, looking at other things as far as their background. This is really important because they see their entire picture in one place, and it starts to make sense. And then every time we start a meeting, we come back to that big mind map and say, let's go through each piece. Has anything changed? Have your values changed? Have your goals changed? And it's a great way where you're engaging her because she looks at something and all of a sudden her organization skills and task management skills come into play and she's like, I can do this. I can do this. Yep. And it's a great way to engage both of them. And I was just sharing before we started that I did a rediscovery with a client where we asked all the questions over again. And the woman said, one of her goals was to move to Phoenix, Arizona. And the husband was like, Barbara, what? And I said, well, I think she wants to move with you, but this is new for you, I see. And he's like, yeah, I had no clue. I assumed we were staying in Staten Island for, he's born and raised in Staten Island. So it was a really good opportunity for us to talk about, okay, well, let's talk about Phoenix, Arizona. What does that look like?
I would just piggyback off the mind map. I agree that visually that can be really helpful in conversations. And recently with one client, we mapped it out and we talked about how it was kind of like the financial check engine light was on with her. That there was something that was, and everybody can kind of relate to how vulnerable you feel when that check engine light goes on and you have no idea why. For her, she was asking a lot of questions about performance, about the portfolio in 2014. And we realized that it wasn't that peg of the mind map that she was really concerned about. It was more the planning for the next generation, that her plan didn't leave money for the grandchildren that didn't exist yet. She didn't have grandchildren yet, but that was playing at the back of her mind because she knew that her daughter was trying to have a family. So the goals had shifted, the goalposts had changed, and so that mind map, though, got her there. And so I do think that that's a really nice method.
I've started, we have regular calls with our clients, and one of the things that's interesting is it typically, for the calls, the man will be the one to take the call. And we've basically started just saying, at the end of every one of our calls, that, okay, we're going to call your spouse now and talk to her. And the reaction that we've gotten since we've converted to this sort of way of servicing them on the phone is more things come out on the phone when we're talking to them individually than are in our joint meetings with them. And I agree with Stacy, you have to have both parties there to communicate and make sure you're giving them sort of fair and equal time in the meeting to discuss goals, because a lot of times I find that the woman may just sit there and not say anything for a really long period of time. So as simple as it sounds, or a tip, is just make sure you're making eye contact and directing the questions to the woman if she's not saying anything, because you've probably lost her. So those calls that we have where the man just wants to talk, if we can't loop all of them in at the same time, I'll just say, okay, this was a great call, and I'm going to call your wife now. So. That's great. And then I get the real answers. No, I'm kidding. So it's worked really nicely, and things come out that I don't think would have otherwise. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think in the other sessions earlier in the day kind of have pointed out men and women are different. They do invest different. They do sometimes hear things differently. And so it's important to definitely make sure that you're engaging and you're listening intently as well. Let's talk about, because all three of you have kind of specialized a little bit in dealing with clients that are going through divorce. For those advisors in the audience that don't maybe specialize in it, but are going to run up against this problem, as we know, about 50% of marriages end in divorce, sadly. Talk about some of the mistakes that you see advisors making that are working with clients in this situation. And whoever wants to go first on this one.
For me, I'm happy to go because I see it all the time. Something you have to be very careful. One of the top pitfalls is actually giving legal advice. We cannot give legal advice. We can't say, take the IRA or take the house. Instead, what you need to do is you need to show an analysis of saying, if you take the IRA, this is where you will be. If you stay in the house, this is where you will be. You have to be very careful that you're not construed as giving legal advice. The other thing is that a lot of people have taken the CDFA, and it's a great designation. I got my designation about 11 years ago and have worked in this field, and I'll tell you, it's still something that I'm learning. And if that gives you kind of an idea of over a decade working with a CDFA, still feeling like I'm learning. So I tell people that that's just the beginning, and that it's kind of like going to kindergarten. My daughter is graduating kindergarten on Friday, which is very, very exciting for me. But she still has till 12th grade. And I feel the same way, that even that designation, once you have it, it's just the start, because the implications of the divorce process and the tax knowledge and the legal knowledge is just unbelievably daunting. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that, ideally work with an advisor who is maybe more experienced as a mentor, which I did, and make sure that you devote a huge amount of your continuing education to that specialty. So if you think you have to do normal continuing education, you need to double that, but have that second amount focused specifically on divorce, divorce and estate planning, divorce and taxation, divorce and college planning, divorce and retirement planning, divorce and P&C. All of those things are vastly impacted by someone going through divorce.
And clearly it's a challenge, it's a complicated situation as you walk through with each client. And it's hard stuff, but I know that you've talked about how rewarding it is, when you can help someone. So I think it's really cool. It's neat. I don't know.
It kind of goes back to my initial story, thinking about in this moment where they're making decisions that are going to impact the next 30 years of their life, and having these really intense conversations, understanding that there is that fog, and that they can only take away so much from the conversations. And so Matt McCullough leads our divorce initiative, and he does such a great job walking people through the balance sheet and maybe picking 3 things for them to remember. So 3 key things. Liquidity, you need to have enough cash to pay your bills through this transition. How is that working for you? Are you going to stay in the house? And then maybe it's a tax consideration with the different assets. But so I think just making really concrete things for them to remember and help make them, the goal for us working with women going through the divorce is really to empower them with a picture of the journey ahead and to give them knowledge, to give them confidence in those meetings. And it is really rewarding to help them get to the next phase.
I think one of the key things is surrounding them, just like you would a client who's maybe a widow, with other professionals. So as Stacy mentioned, we do not give legal advice. So I make sure through all of our meetings, I'm either suggesting or meeting with their other professionals. It sounds, again, real, of course you would, why wouldn't you do that? But I let them know that if we can surround them with a good divorce attorney, a good CPA, and then have the estate plan put together and have an attorney, they feel so much more protected. And I think as women, we like security and we like knowing what's going to happen next. And especially in a divorce situation, it's a scary time of not knowing what the future holds. So if you can kind of wrap those professionals around them and let them know that their team's in place, so when this other person is no longer there, whether it's divorce or a death, they feel that much more empowered and stronger and more secure. So I see financial advisors, they sort of shy away from the other professionals and say, hey, we can do it all. But I find that to be a huge mistake when working with people, especially during these transitions. So,
and all three of you are with kind of well-rounded teams with kind of multiple professionals within your team. For sole practitioners, how would you suggest that they kind of begin to build that network in this kind of arena of working with widows and working with folks that are going through divorce?
I know for divorce, the Association of Divorce Financial Planners has chapters all over the country. I'm in charge of the New York chapter. It's a great place for you to meet other divorce professionals. And I will tell you that when I first started, I would pay a CDFA to review my plans. My total gain and what I actually made on those plans was like nil. I felt like I was working for free, and I probably was, but I was just too heartbroken to actually look at the numbers. But that was really important for me because this was someone who had already been in the field for 10, 15 years, and I learned so much during that process. So it is an investment, but it's an investment that will definitely reach out. So the ADFP and the website is divorceandfinance.org. It's a great association, and they have national conferences, and actually it's in New York this year, which is great. And they have them all over. They've actually had it here in Chicago too.
Great. Anything else to add on that one? Or
I would say, especially if you're a sole practitioner, you need to be really passionate about this area. It is so complex, and it's a unique client to work with. And so I think you need to authentically love working with them and helping them. And if it's going to be your, main bread and butter, you need to be committed to that. And there are men on the women's service team that do very well, but they have that natural affinity towards it. And thinking about events that you host for women to get to know like-minded women and appreciate that community. Sometimes the men, I've seen them go, for instance, like a consignment store where the proceeds go to charity. And they're kind of standing in the consignment store feeling really awkward, right? Like it's not their authentic where they'd be at that moment. So it's got to match in everything that you do, and especially if your business plan is going to be built around it, I think it needs to be authentic.
Yeah, and I agree with Jen. We don't have in-house attorneys or CPAs, so we will have to find them. And so I went through over the years many interviews and meetings with CPAs and attorneys who not only were educated in that space or specialists, but are financial planning friendly. So the hardest thing to work with your clients is someone who doesn't want that team approach, if that's what you're trying to accomplish for your clients. So it's calling a lot of people, asking for good references to clients who have already went through that, asking for their CPAs that they've used, and really just take your time and develop that group of people.
Okay. About 14 trillion, I think, today is kind of in wealth is controlled by women. It's about 52%, and that is expected to climb to 21 trillion by 2030. And we know where a lot of that's going to come from. Unfortunately, men don't live as long. What mistakes do you see advisors, and I'm going to say male advisors specifically, are making when dealing with women? We kind of touched on this a little bit in the session before, but I kind of want to hear from your perspective as well, because this is a huge challenge for the industry, but it's also a huge opportunity.
Sure. Well, I feel like, as you mentioned, you definitely need a passion around it, whether it's through educating yourself or maybe working with another financial advisor who that is their passion, male or female. When I started in the business 25 years ago, women in investing was groundbreaking. And so I did those workshops because of the experience I went through personally with my family and helping my mom with the finances at a really young age. But no one really talked about it. So the fear that I have is because all these statistics are around that advisors now just kind of jump into this market because that's where the money's going to be. And hopefully that's not the case. But so I would just say if that's truly, you know, where you're going with your practice, because that's where the money's going to be, you know, make sure you're doing some of the things that we're suggesting to really help those clients, and not just to go there because that's where it's at. So,
do you have any kind of like horror stories from clients that have moved over to your practice where they've had a really poor experience with their
that's a really good question.
previous advisor?
Nothing that's like, oh my God, you know, oh my gosh, you have to hear. You know, it's just more so some of the things that we've been all talking about, which is just the attention that was given to the financial advisor. I mean, two things to me is the time and the attention to that female investor, and two, speaking in a language that they're not used to, a foreign language, meaning our financial jargon. So those would be the two things that I would definitely say pulls those clients away from advisors who are not participating that way with their relationship. So,
I recently just received a referral from an attorney with a client, and it surprised me a little bit. Met the attorney a long time ago, and he sent over. I spoke with the husband, scheduled the meeting. Wasn't sure why he referred it to me versus somebody else at the firm. I mean, it was a referral to BDF, which is fabulous, but the attorney knew my colleagues, who happened to be male, better than me. But so I went to the meeting and asked lots of discovery questions. I think the importance of listening has been mentioned in every single panel, which makes perfect sense. And it's not just listening, it's listening with the intent to adapt and to meet people where they're at. So it's truly that attentive, active listening. So I sidebar. But so in the meeting, it became clear to me that the reason that I was sitting there was because I was a woman. And the couple had been in several professional relationships where they spoke only to him. So that's not groundbreaking. We've all heard that happens. But the reason why is that he was more vocal in the meeting. So, you know, you need to ask specific questions to her. But then also, how did they meet, right? They met at a very prestigious college. And she is a stay-at-home mom now, but was an engineer attorney. I mean, she's really sharp, really bright and interested, but her style was more laid back. And so to miss those key things, to not ask those questions, not pick up on that, that's how people lose clients. So for me, the takeaway was, I need to share this with my team, right? So in a team meeting, sharing that story so that we are not making those mistakes and that the young advisors are learning from that. And so to me, it was very poignant that don't make assumptions just based on it seems to fit a certain mold.
It's interesting because I've seen bad communicators, both men and women, so I don't think of it as a gender issue at all. And what's nice is that you can teach someone how to communicate. And the biggest thing that I tell my team is that, you know, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion, if not less. So what we do is we actually have 61 questions that we ask in that first meeting. And we have to get that meeting done in an hour, at the most an hour and 15 minutes. That's not a lot of time to ask 61 questions. So what does that mean? It means that you have to shut up. So when they say, you know, I love to go to this church and this is where we go, you might be like, oh my gosh, I go to that church too. Guess what? That's not the right time. They don't really care about that. They want to be listened to. So our goal with women is to have 22 non-investment related contacts with them each year. That seems like a lot, but it's actually very doable. So we have operation manuals of if she's lost her husband, you know, when does she get that card handwritten saying, I'm thinking of you, I know it's been 1 month. That card at the holidays saying, I know you're enjoying the holidays, but I'm sure it's not the same. And we've given our teams words to use, because when someone has lost a husband, when someone's going through divorce, sometimes you don't know what to say. And so we have trained our team on what to say. And everything from just getting her out and having her come to an education meeting, to taking her to dinner, to whatever it might be, is really helpful because women, they are relationship oriented, men are more transactional. So for women, you have to build that trust, and it takes much longer with a woman. But once you do build that trust, that client will be a client of yours for life. And the other thing that's interesting, the men that are sitting in this room saying, gosh, I should just stop, not even work with this market. I'm doing a survey of women going through divorce, and I'm interviewing 100 different women about their experience. And when I ask the question, do you prefer a male or a female advisor? Most of them say it doesn't really matter. Interestingly enough, when women have lost their spouse, they often prefer a gentleman. So these are things to know for you, and you just need to build in a plan of how you make it about them, and you stick to those questions. You don't talk about yourself. So again, that she knows you're there for her, and that you really can be trusted.
Those are great suggestions.
And when you think about those 22 touches, it isn't that difficult to get there. And just a systematic way to think about this would be the 3 Ins. So information, invitations, and introductions. And that's true for all clients, right? But especially women, because they do appreciate being a part of a community. They really appreciate the education. So thinking about information, building a lot of different tools to help educate on topics that they really care about. So things like we've talked in earlier panels, strategic philanthropy, raising financially intelligent children, helping aging loved ones. We did a webinar on Social Security strategies for women because they are unique in divorce and widow situations. And so, or blogs, or for invitations, thinking about events that are interesting. And we found that women really want to be able to tick a lot of boxes when they think about what events they're actually going to attend. If you can make it social and informative and maybe for charity, that's really interesting, and meeting like-minded women. Several of the people on our team are members of boards that are kind of girl power focused. And so those are really nice invitations to be able to send, have a table at an event and introduce different clients to each other. If you have professional women on your team that are interested in networking at all, it's a huge advantage to foster that and to have them network and build those kind of muscles. Because in the women's world, it is an advantage. We do networking very well. And so that's just my little plug for if there's women on your team that enjoy it, foster it. And then introductions. So that is, again, like-minded clients, or if you can provide kind of unique resources. We found that women really appreciate if you can connect them with somebody that can help clean out their mother's home after they moved into the assisted living home, or even a cleaner. How do you find a cleaner? How do you find just online resources to help make life easier, especially for female breadwinners? That's a big value add.
You talked about the 61 questions that you kind of walked through and kind of the initial, and that was for kind of prospects coming in?
It's for prospects, and then we go through and we re-ask those questions after 2 years.
Are you then kind of taking that information and kind of feeding it into financial planning tools, or I'd be curious about the framework that you've instituted, and then if you guys have similar kind of frameworks that you've
I'm happy to share the questions we ask, and I'm happy to share our product, our deliverable. In fact, I was just proofing one on the plane here, and we feed it into the mind map, and it's broken up into different areas: values, goals, assets, relationships, their current advisors, so you can be more of that quarterback, as well as background. And that's really helpful. We do that first, and then we feed it into a financial plan, because that whole financial plan is right there on a piece of paper. It's just now we have to translate it into numbers and scenarios. So it's really helpful, and there are some people that like to see the financial plan, and so we do provide that, and then others that like the mind map, so we do provide that, and we ask them, how would you like to look at this? And for the success of this, we need to look at this page and really this page only. So it helps make it less overwhelming.
Right.
And also I find that it's great for your team. You not having to be the one to do all the client meetings or all the potential client meetings is freeing. And so my team knows the 61 questions, and we've watched videotapes of how to do it right. And we meet every other week with a different aspect of, understanding, like we have 9 high net worth personalities, and we can, by the end of that meeting, know what personality they are, how to communicate with them, and if they're an ideal client for us. So my whole team knows that, so that now I don't have to be in those potential client meetings, and my team can do it. So all of a sudden our funnel, we're producing more and more and more. And the team is also going out and doing part of these 100 interviews of women, and that's important because they're learning about women who are going through loss and what their challenges are. And so they're getting out in the community and getting known also. So it's really been very powerful.
We're very process oriented, so we have lots of checklists, both internal and external, but especially in the case of losing a spouse and then divorce, the extra checklist to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and then making sure that you're bringing up, we don't give legal advice, but it's more just raising red flags. Have you asked this question of your attorney, and then working with them to kind of be the quarterback of their team. I think you're exactly right that supporting them, surrounding them with a team where they're really confident that we've got their back, that's huge. And so I think that the checklists are a simple tool, but effective.
Yep, very similar in our situation. I think the plan, our comprehensive financial plan, covers all the key areas. And then one of the things, again, that it's hard in a 1-hour meeting or even a couple-hour meeting to get to everything. It's really, I think, the continuing follow-up on those topics, which we find is important: Social Security, healthcare, long-term care, estate planning. So each one of our follow-up, either phone calls or face-to-face, is specifically geared towards that topic. So you'll find right away in that initial meeting, understanding all their concerns and really honing in on those that are most important. And then to the point of Jen saying, we have your back. We like to take things off our clients' plates. One of the things, estate planning, I think is critical in a divorce or widowed situation. That seems to be one of the last things our clients get to. So if we can say, well, let us coordinate that for you. Again, as simple as that, and we're present at the meeting. And I always tell my clients, I know you better than this attorney, this initial consultation with an estate planning attorney is going to be. It's great that we can all meet together and then, help them, just walk them through that process. So.
Great. Well, I think we have a microphone, and I think we'll, at this point, open it up to see if there are any questions for our panel. There's one and a couple up front.
Could you go through some general guidelines or experiences you've had with couples that have gone through a divorce and now you've been able to build relationships post-divorce and then going the other way, after they remarried and kind of you've seen anything?
Sure. So a situation, the question is, how have you handled clients that are going through a divorce, both during and then after? Is that?
Yeah. And keeping the clients, the 2 months
right.
after, how do you handle it in the past?
So this has developed over the years because it's happening more and more often, right? And for us, we want to make everything really transparent. As soon as it comes up, then we actually have a letter that says, okay, there's a conflict of interest here. We have to have all of our meetings together. All of our calls, we don't meet one-on-one at that point. And actually some of the planning they need to get from, we suggest other advisors because we can't be planning for just one of them because of that conflict of interest, because they're both clients. So we've been able to keep many clients through that situation. It's awkward, but just transparency is number one. And then we have actually then had different wealth managers working with the different spouses to have that kind of separation.
That's a great suggestion. Yeah, we have a client who, do you know those clients that you just know are going to get divorced? Well, it was these, and I knew why, because they're both a handful and a half. And unfortunately, I took them on, when I first started the firm, where, if you could fog a mirror, you're a great client. So the good news is I used it as a wonderful opportunity to fire them both. But essentially, we had that issue because he was really pressuring us to have an individual meeting, and I didn't quite understand why. Mm-hmm. And in that meeting, it came out that, actually, we are getting divorced. And at that point, I said, guess what? All meetings have to be together, all communication. And he would, on purpose, communicate with us, not copying her. So any response, I would respond copying her on purpose. And so now he knows that he can't do that. And we'll introduce them to advisors, and they'll work with other people. But keeping someone, you can definitely do that. You just do exactly what Jen did. We had something new. A client that we're helping through divorce, we're helping her. She hired us separately, had not worked with us before. She was referred to us by an attorney. And we've been helping her through the divorce process have the best financial settlement. And I guess we're doing a good enough job that her husband, who she's divorcing, essentially asked to hire us as well. And so kind of an odd situation. And I went to her and said, we don't feel comfortable doing this. We can't work with him through the divorce process. You are our own client. And we're not really comfortable doing it after the divorce process either, even though we ethically can after the process. And she said, actually, I would love you to work with him. And the reason why is that if he's financially sound, which I know you will help him be, he will be there to make the maintenance payments and the child support payments to me and my daughters. And so we met, and we met all, the team and both of them together to talk about this, to say, what would this look like? Are you going to be comfortable that the wine tasting is in my home and you're going to both be there? How do you want us to manage that? And it was a really good meeting, and shockingly enough, it's going really well. So it's interesting, you can be confronted with divorce from different sides.
Right.
What you have said has been terrific about the concern for the wife in divorce or death and that part of the client relationship. What you have not mentioned at all is how you deal with the next generation and whether daughters and sons are on the same level playing field, because most of the time they're not.
Sure. The question was around second generation and how we're dealing with our clients' children. Is that it? Yeah. So we are currently doing a lot of that now, whether it's from our outreach in our meetings. We're always, especially with women, they want to talk about the children. That's obviously sometimes a main topic. So if you're looking for something to talk to the woman about, that's a great topic to talk about. But we've gotten referrals to the children from either spouse. And
some of it is the question that I asked at the last session, and it's when you deal with the next generation, how much does the bank put assets under management for the women versus assets under supervision for the man?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question. We're working with the second generation children, just as we would their parents, with a slightly different process.
And you put the women in a trust fund and then you're building a business, or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know they were following up with the question last session too.
I think all of you are trying to grow the women's assets just like you are the men's assets. It's not all about preservation.
Oh, no.
Right?
So,
is that kind of the question?
Right, but some of it is, do you transfer the business, and they have been in that first generation, when you're transferring it to the second generation? Are assets put in a trust for the woman, and the son gets to run the...
I see.
I think it's very family specific, right? I can remember being a part of a family meeting where the two brothers owned the business, and there were two daughters. The matriarch is our client, and so we're helping her with those decisions. And there wasn't enough wealth for the, 2008 happened, some real estate went bad. There wasn't enough wealth there for the two daughters. So it was a big planning issue, and the IRA beneficiaries needed to be changed to really follow through. I mean, she lost her husband, and he really created this whole plan, and then it wasn't playing out. Right. And so to help her understand, okay, here's how it looks now, based on how the estate plan is, and here is a plan of action that could make it look like what you and your husband had envisioned. So it wasn't a male versus female issue, but it was definitely an emotion. I mean, it just ended up being that way.
To a certain extent, it was in the fact that you said there wasn't enough for the two daughters.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, you're right. And so, yes. And again, transparency, encouraging them to have a family meeting and talk this out and make sure everybody's on the same page.
And we don't, things don't change overnight. We're not going for a revolution, but it's that these issues need to be addressed, and not the unconscious assumptions that we've had in the past that the women will be taking care of a husband for their family and.
I'm happy to share a resource. I started a charity 13 years ago called Savvy Ladies, and we do 60 programs a year free of charge, both online and live in New York. And we've worked also one-on-one with women. We have CFPs that help us with a financial fitness helpline, and we've worked with 12,000 women, all free of charge. So there's a lot more for women as far as empowering ourselves. Our biggest challenge is that almost all the women that come to Savvy Ladies meetings are single. When we put something for women who are married, they don't come. Unfortunately, a lot of women, it's the essentially divide and conquer. He does one part of the household things, she does the other, and it often tends to fall to the finance of him doing. That's something that we need to change. That's something that we continually are talking about, because many women believe that during their marriage, that man is a financial plan, and it's not until they're forced to that they come to us. And unfortunately, they're behind the 8 ball immediately because they don't understand what's going on in the finances. And you're not going to learn French in one day, just like you're not going to learn to be a heart surgeon in one day. It's the same thing. Women need to be doing this from a younger age. So that's something that we're struggling with. Now we're actually targeting women who are younger before they're married, hoping to get them before they get married and get them right out of college.
Another question back here.
This has been a very interesting discussion, and it's so clear that what you do goes well beyond just the investment piece. I'm very curious, in light of that, how do you charge for your services?
So we are fee only, so it's a percentage of the assets, and then everything else is included. So it is a big commitment, and we are there for more than just the finances. Our mission is to help people make sound decisions to enjoy a full life, and it's intentional that it's not sound financial decisions, it's just sound decisions. And so that's a choice we've made in divorce situations. A lot of time the assets take quite a bit of time to move over. A lot of people think, okay, you sign the MSA and we're done. It can be a long process. And so we have accepted that. Sometimes we have in those situations where they'd pay a one-time fee, planning fee, and then that is credited towards when we manage the investments.
We charge assets under management. However, during the divorce process, if we're modeling out working with the attorneys, we charge hourly just as an attorney would. And we have different levels of, so if the analyst is inputting data into, family law software, they're going to be charged at a much lower rate than, one of our, top CDFAs meeting with them. And we can project out roughly what the total cost is going to be, and we charge a retainer and we then put that in escrow, and then we bill against that. And then once they go through that, if they do, then we bill every month.
We used to be strictly assets under management, and over the past 3 years now we charge a planning fee, and we're compensated by the assets under management.
Thank you.
Hi, ladies. Thank you very much. It's great. I had one question kind of in regards to what he had mentioned, and this was a good point, is so you're going through the divorce process, you have the new client, and then let's just say she gets married or he, and they say, well, okay, well, why don't we work with my planner? What steps do you take to keep that business if they get married again?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it's really frustrating. Really frustrating because what that sometimes is telling me that she's going back to that role that she used to have. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, we know we didn't do a good enough job. That's essentially what that tells us. And then we go lick our wounds and talk about what went wrong. What did we do that went wrong? Because if we're doing a good job, and I'm not talking about investment performance, of course that's important, but if we're doing those 22 touches a year, if she is like family to us, that's just not a possibility. And we've had clients go and do that, and if he won't come over, and then she says, fine, I'm sticking with my advisor. But usually he comes over. But if it does happen, hasn't happened yet, but it would, it means that we're just not doing a good enough job.
I would agree in that I haven't seen us lose clients that way. More so, it's just that we would gain another client.
Agreed. Yeah.
Any other questions? Nope. Well, thank you to all of you. I thought this was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. I do have a couple of housekeeping items. First, another thank you to the Morningstar Women's Initiative, this group, for putting this track together. If you found this informative, we'd ask you to kind of indicate so on the survey that we'll be sending out at the end of the conference to see if Morningstar should be doing more tracks like this. The exhibit hall is going to open up at 2:30 for refreshments, so make sure to check out the exhibit hall upstairs. And then the opening speaker is Jeremy Grantham from GMO, and he'll be starting at 3. But once again, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for being on the panel. It's been great. I've had a lot of fun kind of digging into this topic, and it's clear that what you guys do is really powerful stuff for your clients. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.